Have you ever noticed how some people can be surrounded by love, support, and good people and still feel unsafe? They double-check text messages before sending them. They replay conversations in their heads for hours. They prepare for worst-case scenarios that haven't happened. They struggle to relax even when everything seems okay. And maybe that's you. Maybe you've spent so much of your life waiting for something to go wrong that peace itself feels unfamiliar. But here's the question most people never ask. What if the feeling of being unsafe has nothing to do with your life today and everything to do with what your mind learned years ago? Because sometimes the danger leaves, but the alarm stays on. Imagine a child lying in bed at night, not because they're afraid of monsters. They're afraid of footsteps, afraid of arguments, afraid of someone's mood changing, afraid of not knowing what version of a parent will walk through the door. Nothing dramatic has to happen. No screaming, no violence. Sometimes all it takes is unpredictability. One day they're praised, the next day they're ignored. One day they feel loved, the next day they feel invisible. And slowly, without realizing it, they learn a powerful lesson. Safety can disappear at any moment. Years pass. The child grows up, gets a job, makes friends, falls in love, builds a life. But deep inside, something hasn't changed. Their mind is still standing guard, still watching, still waiting, still scanning for danger. And that's where many people become confused, because they look around and say, my life isn't that bad. So why can't I relax? Why do I always feel anxious? Why am I constantly preparing for problems? The answer isn't weakness, it's adaptation. Your mind learned a job a long time ago, and it got really good at it, protecting you, even when protection is no longer needed. Think about a smoke alarm. If it becomes too sensitive, it doesn't just react to fires. It reacts to burnt toast, steam from the shower, things that aren't actually dangerous. The alarm isn't broken, it's trying too hard to keep you safe. And for some people, that's exactly what happens emotionally. A delayed reply feels like rejection. A small disagreement feels like abandonment. A mistake feels like failure. Not because they're dramatic, not because they're irrational, because somewhere deep inside, their nervous system learned that little things could suddenly become big things. Pause for a moment. Think about your own life. Do you find yourself expecting disappointment before it happens? Do you struggle to trust good moments? Do you feel tense when everything is calm? If so, there may be a reason. Many people who never feel safe aren't afraid of what's happening now. They're afraid of what used to happen before. And the mind doesn't always know the difference. One of the strangest effects of this is how people react to happiness. You would think happiness feels good, but for some people, happiness feels dangerous. Because every good thing in their past eventually ended. Every peaceful moment was interrupted. Every feeling of security was temporary. So when life finally becomes stable, their brain whispers, don't get comfortable. Something bad is coming. It's a painful way to live. Always waiting, always bracing, always preparing, even when nobody is attacking you, even when nobody is leaving, even when nobody is angry. The battle continues inside, and often nobody else can see it. That's why some of the strongest looking people are secretly exhausted. The friend who never asks for help, the person who handles everything alone, the one who says, I'm fine. Sometimes they aren't strong because they feel safe. Sometimes they're strong because they never learned how to feel safe. There's a difference, and that difference changes everything. Here's another realization many people never expect. Feeling unsafe doesn't always make someone cling to others. Sometimes it makes them push people away. You would think someone who feels insecure would constantly seek connection. Sometimes they do, but sometimes they become fiercely independent. They tell themselves they don't need anyone. They avoid vulnerability. They keep emotional distance, not because they don't want love, because depending on people once felt dangerous. Trust once hurt. Connection once disappointed them. So distance became protection, but protection has a cost. The walls that keep pain out also keep love out. And many people spend years wondering why they feel lonely while guarding themselves from the very thing they need. Pause and reflect again. What if some of your habits aren't personality traits? What if they're survival strategies? What if your constant overthinking isn't because you're broken? What if it's because your mind learned that paying attention was necessary? What if your difficulty trusting people isn't a flaw? What if trust once came with consequences? The answers may be uncomfortable, but they can also be freeing, because when you understand where a pattern came from, you stop blaming yourself for having it. And that's important, because shame keeps people stuck. Understanding helps people move. Now here's the twist. The goal isn't to convince yourself that the world is perfectly safe. It isn't. Life contains uncertainty. People can disappoint us. Things can go wrong. The goal is something much smaller and much more powerful. To recognize when your past is speaking louder than your present. To notice when an old fear is driving a current reaction. To ask yourself, am I responding to what's happening right now? Or am I responding to what happened years ago? That question alone can change a life, because awareness creates choice, and choice creates freedom. Little by little, you stop treating every discomfort like a disaster. You stop assuming every silence means rejection. You stop expecting every good thing to disappear. Not overnight, not perfectly, but gradually. The alarm becomes quieter, the world becomes less threatening, and something remarkable begins to happen. You discover that safety isn't always found in your surroundings. Sometimes it's built within you, through trust, through self-awareness, through realizing that the scared version of you who learned to survive deserves compassion, not criticism. Because the truth is, many people who never feel safe aren't weak. They're tired. Tired from carrying invisible armor every day. Tired from preparing for battles that never come. Tired from protecting themselves long after the danger has passed. And maybe that's why this message matters. Because healing doesn't always start with becoming stronger. Sometimes it starts with realizing you don't have to stay on guard forever. Sometimes it starts with understanding that the child who learned to expect danger is no longer alone. And maybe, for the first time in a very long time, it's safe to stop running.